Hello. Tiny, you don't look happy. You look very panicked. Okay, so this is kind of the first of the new format, Tales from the Hedge. We're doing it like this because I haven't really been able to do much work for the last couple of months. I've kind of disappeared from social media. I've been a bit ill. Things haven't been working great with me. So I'm supposed to be writing a book that was supposed to be published at the end of last year. But yeah, things have been a little difficult because various issues. So I've just been making stuff that I like to make rather than stuff that I really need to concentrate on. And so we decided to do Tales from the Hedge as a slightly new format. Mainly because people seem to think my darling little person, they're on that side, is hilarious when we're on camera together. So Tiny has decided to come on board as like a co-host, which has been very cool. We already have people watching us. Hi, Caroline. Okay, I am going to jump in and out of comments because the way that we're going to work this is I have my research that I have done, that I've been on a given subject, like we do on Tales from the Hedge. So I am going to go through my notes and my careful research, and Tiny is basically the reaction camera to it. So they're just gonna pitch in with comments whenever they feel like it. So yeah, that's how this is gonna work. So today, our topic is Mother Shipton. Tiny, do you know anything about Mother Shipton?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, this is going to be a good start. It's going to be entertaining. So, Mother Shipton. A lot of people might recognize the name because we cover a lot of kind of history, folklore type things on here. This is the first time I think we've done Tales from the Hedge on a specific person. So I will start. Mother Shipton was born Ursula Southill in 1488. Her mother was a 15-year-old orphan. She was born in a cave in North Yorkshire, outside of the town of Knaresborough. The earliest sources of the legends around her early life and birth were collected in 1667 by the author Richard Hedge. It is said that she was born during a violent thunderstorm and was born with physical deformities, with various issues including a hunchback, bulging eyes. It is also reported that instead of crying after being born, she cackled, and as she did so, the storms stopped. Her mother.
So basically, she's like a stereotypical witch.
That's very much what the legends are, yes. So, her mother was said to be a very poor 15-year-old who had no means to support herself and had fallen under the influence of Satan. Her birth was said to be the result of an affair, although some reports state that there was a legend that Agatha had summoned the devil in order to conceive the child with him. The actual origin of her father is unknown. Agatha always refused to reveal him. At one point, she was forcibly brought before the local magistrate, but still refused to disclose his identity. The circumstances surrounding Agatha's life and Ursula's birth meant that they were social outcasts and forced to live alone. Hence, why they ended up living in the same cave Ursula was born in for the first 2 years of her life. There were many rumours that Agatha was a witch and Ursula was the spawn of Satan. And these rumours perpetuated within the local villages and towns around where they lived. It probably didn't help that near the cave there was a well-known skull-shaped pool which turned things into stone. The cave is known today as Mother Shipton's cave. The skull-shaped pool does indeed almost turn things to stone, as it is an incredibly mineral-rich source of water. And people still go there, hang up objects such as toys or strips of cloth, and over time they do become encased in minerals and effectively turn to stone. Now, I said that they lived in the cage, not the cage, in the cave. It's slightly better than a cage, just. According to some 17th century sources, when Ursula was around the age of 2, the abbot of Beverley intervened, removed them from the cave, and secured Agatha's place at a convent, which was called the Convent of the Order of St. Bridget, located in Nottinghamshire. Ursula was sent to a foster family in the Knaresborough area. Agatha and Ursula would never see each other again. So yeah, not the best start.
That's a bit bad.
A bit bad. Yeah. Yeah, so 2 years as outcasts living in caves, everyone thinking you're the spawn of Satan. And then mother gets, I love the way that this was reported as secured a place in a convent, not was shipped off to a convent forcibly, but was secured a place in a convent. And yeah, her child's given away. And that we don't, like, Agatha disappears at this point. We don't know what else happened to Agatha. We assume she stayed in the convent until the end of her days. But that is all that we could really find on Agatha. So, although it is likely that Ursula's physical
They could
deformity...
have found her in a river. It could have been worse.
They could have what?
They could have drowned her in a river or something. It could have been worse.
That would have been worse, yes. And I mean, yeah, we are talking like 17th century. No, we're not. We're talking 15th. When did I say? 1488. Yeah, we are talking like 15th century. So this is like witch trial kind of era UK. There were secular courts at this time. But so it wasn't kind of church courts, that the legal process was separate, but the church was still pretty powerful. And yeah, this is the time period where we were saying women usually hung at this point rather than drowned, but it's a fine line between those time periods. So, there were several accounts of Ursula's unusual abilities as a child. Stories range from her foster mother finding her as a baby in impossibly high places that she seems to have got to without any help from anyone. There's also accounts of her retaliating against people who would mock her physical appearance by doing things like, and this is a very specific one that came out in the accounts, people used to wear those big ruffs, like you see them in the paintings. Apparently she used to turn those into toilet seats when people would mock the way she looked. So there was that.
Well,
that
sounds
kind of had it
nice.
We kind of had it coming. I think a toilet seat for a ruff is probably, No. Despite a lot of the townspeople being wary of Ursula, as she grew, so did her knowledge of plants and herbs, and she became an incredibly valuable and respected local herbalist. As she became more socially accepted, her social circle grew, and it was then that she met local carpenter Toby Shipton. When Ursula was 24 years old, she married Toby Shipton, and from this point on, she adopted her husband's surname and became known as Mother Shipton. A lot of people were quite surprised that she'd managed to get married. And there were a lot of rumours kind of that she'd put some kind of a spell on him, and that she'd done some kind of witchcraft to get him to marry her, basically. Which it is reported that although it's likely Ursula's physical deformities, if you like, were exaggerated, it does seem from a lot of contemporary descriptions that she did indeed have some disfigurement that meant she was largely ostracized from the townspeople's fold. Like I say, she found some acceptance with her foster family and a few friends, but she did ultimately spend a large part of her life in the woods, learning about plants and their medical properties, and pretty much stayed in the woodlands back in the cave where her and her mother had spent those first 2 years of her life, up until she met Toby. Now, as she moved through her early married life, there were still a lot of tales told about her using magic, witchcraft-like abilities. There is a story that tells of when a neighbour came knocking on her door and was very distressed and upset that someone had broken into their house and stolen her clothing. Ursula calmly told the neighbour she would find exactly who stole the items from her, and they both marched down to Market Cross, which is kind of the market area in Knaresborough. Upon arriving, a woman started dancing towards Ursula and her neighbour, singing, "I stole my neighbour's smock and coat. I'm a thief, and here I am to show it." The woman who did have the neighbour's stolen clothing on her handed it back over and then basically ran away. Now, unfortunately, Mother Shipton's marriage was reasonably short-lived. 2 years after she was married, in 1514, Toby Shipton died. And again, the rumours started. There were a lot of rumours among the townspeople that Ursula was somehow responsible for his death. And between the grief of losing her husband and the harsh words of the townspeople, she was basically forced to move back into the woods, back into that same cave. Here she would continue to create potions and herbal remedies for people, and Mother Shipton's name slowly became more and more well known, to the point that people would travel far distances to see her and retrieve potions and spells. As she grew more and more confident, she made claims that she could see into the future. She started by making small predictions involving her town and the people within it. And as they came true, she began telling prophecies of the monarchy and the future world. In 1537, King Henry VIII wrote a letter to the Duke of Norfolk where he mentions a witch of York, and this is believed to be a reference to Mother Shipton. So for all she'd had a really rubbish start, by the time we're at 1537, which would put her at what, 40? Around 40, just under 40. She was being mentioned in letters from the king, so she's not too bad. Like, she was still living in a cave in the woods. It wasn't great.
I mean, but I don't think that sounds too bad. Like, I would like to live in a cave in the woods. I think that'd be quite fun.
Yeah, but would you though? Like, I know we've done a lot of camping, but like actually living in a cave in the woods is like that's pretty hardcore.
I mean, away from people.
It's away from people.
Animals.
I love that I have like the only teenager in the land that's coming out of like a 2-year pandemic where everything's locked down. Like, let's live in a cave in the woods. Speak to no one. Just hide. But yes. Harold's here. Hey. So yeah. So like she'd got to 40, she was in the woods, but the king at least knew who she was. So we'll take the good or the bad. Now, this is a stupid question. Shall we take a look at some of the prophecies that she made? Okay, so as I said, a lot of the prophecies she initially made were ones about her local area and where she lived. And the first one that we've got here is, water shall come over Ouse Bridge, and a windmill shall be set upon a tower, and an elm tree shall lie at every man's door. Now, the River Ouse is the river next to York, and the Ouse Bridge was the bridge that went over it. This prophecy meant absolutely nothing to anyone, to the people of York who heard it, until the town got a piped water system. The system sent water across the Ouse Bridge in pipes, and it was a windmill that actually drove the pump that pumped the water. The pipes they used were made out of elm trees, and they came to everyone's door. Another one that she made for local area that features again the Ouse is, before Ouse Bridge and Trinity Church meet, what is built in the day shall fall in the night, till the highest stone in the church be the lowest stone of the bridge. It wasn't long after she made this prophecy that a huge storm did fall on York. The steeple on the top of Trinity Church fell, and a portion of the Ouse Bridge was destroyed and swept away by the river. Later, when making repairs to the bridge, pieces that had previously been the steeple of the church were used as the foundation for the new section of the bridge. This made Trinity Church and the Ouse Bridge what was built in the day and fell in the night. Steeple stone from Trinity Church, the highest stone. This ended up being used as the foundations from the bridge, the lowest stone. So again, that one seems to have come true. As previously mentioned, she also went on to make prophecies regarding the monarchy, and a lot of these involved Henry VIII. So it's possibly why he was writing about her and why she was on his radar, because she was getting a little bit of infamous, she was getting fairly well known. And yeah, if you had this woman who could predict massive storms and stuff, like talking about you would probably like pay attention to what was going on. So one of the big ones regarding Henry VIII. Now this is quite long-winded, so we'll go through the whole thing and then we will break it down to dissect it. So we have, when the cow doth ride the bull, then priest beware the skull, and when the lower shrubs do fall, the great trees quickly follow shall. The mitred peacock's lofty cry shall to his master be a guide, and one great court to pass shall bring what was never done by any king. The poor shall grieve to see that day, and who did feast must fast and pray. Fate so decreed their overthrow, riches brought pride, and pride brought woe. Now, this foretells a whole load of political shenanigans that went on during Henry VIII's reign. So, go through it bit by bit. When the cow doth ride the bull, then priest beware the skull. When Shipton would have visions of specific people, she wouldn't see their faces or their names, but the cow mentioned represents the heraldry, like the coat of arms and things, of Henry VIII. And similarly, can't speak, in much the same way, The bull represents Anne Boleyn and her heraldry. Shipton is marking in the beginning of her prophecy the marriage of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. The next part, priest beware. This is because their marriage marks the beginning of the dissolution of monasteries. This is when King Henry VIII demobilized all monasteries, priories, and convents in England. A lot of people lost their lives, and this was done basically because, you know, they were fighting to stop him doing this. They were pressing against the reforms he made to limit the power of the Catholic Church. And again, the next part, the mitred peacock's lofty cry shall be his master's shall be his master. I'm going to start that again. The mitred peacock's lofty cry shall to his master be a guide. During the late 15th century, early 16th century and early 16th century in England, the king was not actually the controlling force behind a lot of matters of state. The man who was in control of this was the king's chief advisor, Thomas Wolsey. Thomas Wolsey was just the son of a butcher, and he managed to rise up and become chancellor and then cardinal of the Catholic Church. He was the king's chief advisor and controlling in all matters of state and Henry VIII's policies. Wolsey even became depicted as an alter rex, which basically translates to other king. This is because his influence was so absolute in both political and religious spheres. He not only had the ear of the king for making policies and laws and those kinds of things, but it was also really high up in the Catholic Church. So this is a massive amount of power for one person to have. In this prophecy, Mother Shipton refers to him as a mitred peacock, and this is because he came from such a lowly state of being the son of just a regular working class butcher to the point where he was in control and guiding Henry VIII and all of his policies regarding England. The next part of the prophecy was, and one great court to pass shall bring what was never done by any king. This part of the prophecy refers to Henry VIII seizing power back from the Catholic Church when he created the Church of England, which had never been done by any monarch before. For a monarch to put themselves at the head of a church and challenge the powerhouse at the time, which was Catholicism, the Catholic Church, Rome, was, you know, it just hadn't been done. So that's what that refers to. The next part reads, the poor shall grieve to see that day, and who did feast must fast and pray. Fate so decreed their overthrow. Riches brought pride, and pride brought woe. Now, Henry VIII wanted to take control of the land and property owned by the Catholic Church, as well as just like their political influence. He believed that the people who were previously in control of this, like the heads of the monasteries, were corrupted. Kind of rich coming from a monarch, but there we are, you know, double standards. When he took back those resources, the money going into these institutions stopped. The people in them had a lot of wealth before this happened, and then that was all taken away. And they no longer had any of the wealth and luxury and what a lot of people would say was a very easy life that they had before. However, it was the poor that were ultimately the ones that suffered, because as well as the monasteries looking after themselves, they were also feeding the poor, giving them help, giving them assistance, and they simply didn't have the resources to do that anymore. And if they did get resources in, they would keep them within the monasteries. So a lot of, yeah, you could say the monasteries were corrupt, but they did like look after people as well. And when they lost the money, because Henry VIII turned up and took it all, well, not him directly, but you know, that was gone. So yeah, powerful men turning up and taking away social welfare support. It's almost like nothing's changed in 500 years. This got very real. Oh man. Okay, so it's been a day. Okay, so Shipton says the fall of the church was inevitable. That as they became more wealthy, they became more prideful. They were a threat of power over the country, and it was this that ultimately led to their downfall. So, yeah, some of Mother Shipton's most well-known prophecies are the ones that foretell modern events, and these tend to be a little vague. A lot of these are found in one of the more famous editions of her published prophecies. However, the language used is not 16th century, and so the validity of some of these is naturally going to come into question. One of the very famous ones includes "The world to an end shall come" in 1881. Now, this version was not published until 1862. And over a decade later, its actual author, Charles Hindley, admitted in print that he invented this. He created the manuscript himself. This fictional prophecy was published over the years with different dates in several different countries. Different publications of the booklet, The Life and Prophecies of Ursula Southill, better known as Mother Shipton, that's the snappy short title, predicted the world would end in 1991, in the late 70s, and in 1981. Like every time they kept republishing this, they were like, "Oh, the world didn't end. Change the date." So, another well-known one, which came from a fictionalized version by Hindley, so it was credited to her for a long time, but we actually now know the author, Charles Hindley, made it up, is one of her most quoted prophecies, which goes, "A carriage without a horse shall go, disaster fill the world with woe, in water iron then shall float as easy as a wooden boat." And it does seem to be a lot of these like rhyming couplet type prophecies that are the ones that were later confirmed to just be made up. So there is that. Based on references to her and a lot of resources detailing the events of her life, historians do believe that Mother Shipton was a real person. Most historians who we ask are like, "Oh yeah, she existed," and most of them agree that her date of birth is reasonably correct. It was around 1488. They do genuinely believe, and there's evidence to show this. That, you know, there are records from that time, that her mother was indeed 15, that her mother was called Agatha Southill, and that they did live in the cave. That's all pretty non-disputed. Like most historians and sources we have are like, yeah, she was a person. The accounts of her life in general are pretty true, which is good. Given that almost every reference made to her in some way references her physical appearance, it does seem likely that she suffered some kind of hunchback and possibly a deformity of her nose. Almost everything else is questionable, and it does seem very plausible that she did make a living from potions, herbal remedies, and prophecies of the future. So it seems like, although this is kind of a legend now, and a lot of this sounds really far-fetched, like the evidence backs it up. Like it does seem most of it was, or at least the broad strokes of it were in a lot of way very true. So yeah, hi panda cat. So yeah, that seems to be true. As previously mentioned, she was referenced, or at least the Witch of York was referenced by Henry VIII when he wrote to the Duke of Norfolk. It's also documented in 1666 when Samuel Pepys recorded in his diary that he was looking over the damage in London caused by the Great Fire of London. And when he was, walking around and surveying the damage, he did it in the company of the royal family, and he heard them discuss Mother Shipton's prophecy that such a catastrophic event could take place. So there's documented evidence there as well. The earliest account of Mother Shipton's prophecies were published in 1640. Now, that's 80 years after her death. The story goes the document of Mother Shipton's life was recorded by a woman named Joanne Walker, who heard the story as a young girl, and she wrote it down as Mother Shipton basically told her about her life and spoke about her life. Mother Shipton herself never wrote anything down or published anything during her lifetime. So a lot of the prophecies, some of them seem a lot more plausible than others, and a lot of the ways that historians are kind of like figuring out which ones she probably did make and which ones she probably didn't are based on the language. It's simply based on the language that was used. We don't have anything concrete to be like, that was definitely her and that was definitely just made up by someone. Because obviously she was really infamous. So a lot of people are going to draw on that and try and, unfortunately, especially after she died, because like she can't dispute it at that point. So yeah. Right. So yeah, she never actually wrote anything down. The cave where she lived is known as England's oldest tourist attraction. And for hundreds of years, people have trekked to see the cave where she was born. The cave's water has a mineral content so high, anything placed in the pool will slowly be covered in layers of stone. People place items in the pool and return later to see them turn to stone. It is assumed that many of her prophecies were never written down, and that many of the legends and prophecies that are credited to her were created after her death to enhance the folk legend that she became. But yeah, the cave's like, it's a massive tourist attraction now. If anyone's in Yorkshire and wants to go and visit this, it's huge. And you can still go to the
I
skull
reckon
shape.
we should go.
Should we do a Mother Shipton road trip? Go and turn something into stone, because you can't. People do
I reckon
genuinely
we should. I
still
think it'd
do
be fun.
People genuinely still do this. You can go and take, like, people often take little soft toys. There are some of the most terrifying looking teddy bears I've ever seen in my life, because like I went online to research it and I was like, oh, let's see what's that. Like, people get lovely little stuffed teddy bears and then hang them up, and then they're like, 6 months later, this is what happened, and it's just like this teddy bear gargoyle on the side of the world. I'm like, why?
Oh my god.
But yeah, but I was like,
I think I should put one of my old Barbie dolls in it, you know, the really scary ones.
The what?
Like, you know my old Barbie dolls that I used to destroy, and they turned out to
It
be
won't
really
work with
freaky.
Barbie dolls. It won't work with Barbie dolls though, because the water needs to soak into them, so it has to be something like soft that would absorb water. We could make voodoo dolls. Not voodoo dolls. Voodoo dolls are used in healing. We could make puppets and hang those up and turn people to stone.
It'd
Let's
be a
not do
way
that.
to.
Probably bad.
I think it'd be a good way to start Frank and Baby off. I reckon we should go and dip Frank and Baby in the water and turn them up.
Just clarify for the live stream that Baby is a stuffed giraffe toy that you have, and not an actual baby that you want to drown in a well. Okay, moving on. Mother Shipton has indeed now reached legendary status in terms of folklore and historical figures. Her name became associated with many tragic events and strange goings on in the UK, in Northern America, and in Australia throughout the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. Fortune tellers often use her effigy or statue for purposes of drawing associations between them and her for promotional reasons. There were quite a few English pubs named after her, but only 2 survive. one near her birthplace in Knaresborough, and the other is in Portsmouth. The latter has a statue of her above the door. A caricature of Mother Shipton was used in early pantomime. You know, like they have a pantomime dame. Well, apparently, Mother Shipton used to pop up in pantomimes as well. And we know this because it's mentioned in like a folk song. It's mentioned in a folk song from Yorkshire that has been written down. It was recorded in the 18th century, and the line goes, "Of all the pretty pantomimes that have been seen and sung in rhymes since famous Johnny Rich's time, there's none like Mother Shipton." I don't know who Johnny Rich is. My research didn't go that far. But apparently he's a big deal in the world of pantomimes. But yes, there we go. There is also a moth. I found it full of moth. There is also a Mother Shipton moth, which is named after her. As on each of the wing patterns, there is a pattern that resembles a hag's, like an old woman's face and profile. I've looked at pictures of this moth. You can kind of see it, but it's not fantastic. Like it vaguely, there's a picture there. In 2013, there was a fundraising campaign to raise £35,000 for a statue of her to be put up, and it was complete in 2017. And the statue is in Knaresborough, and it sits on a bench in the town's market square. So yeah, that's Mother Shipton. We could do a Mother Shipton road trip because we could go to all the places. We could do Mother Shipton's cave, and then we could go to Knaresborough, and we could go to the pub, and we could find this statue. I don't really want to go and try and catch a moth. That seems very long-winded, but we could do the other stuff. So, you know what it is? It's
we
crazy.
Could do it next summer. I reckon we should.
We could do it this summer. It's only January.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I forget
Okay.
some things.
You forgot it wasn't New Year, didn't you? You forgot it was January, didn't you? But yeah, yeah, we could. I've never been, and it's crazy because it's really not far from us. Like we're in Durham, and it's about an hour away. Like we could be there in an hour. It's not far. But yeah, it's very big. You can go in the cave. It's a whole thing. That is still there. But yeah, it's kind of, it's a little bit annoying because when you look at when everything was published about her and all of the books that were sold and things like that, it's all like after. It's like she did enjoy, obviously she enjoyed some success in her lifetime because she had the king writing about her. She appeared, you know, she made a living from it, even though she lived in a. Part of me wonders if she did live in the cave. Like, do you think, given the amount of people that knew about her and the amount of like how infamous she was, do you think she just kind of like pretended to live in the cave? Do you think she like Bear Grylls did? Because I would do that.
Maybe she maybe she had some like weird secret cabin near the cave and just went to the cave to do all the weird properties and stuff.
That's what I think. Like if I was like, if you're like commanding enough respect and professional credo to have people like travel in to see you and kings talk about you, and you live in a cave, I'd be like, yeah, I live in a cave, and then I'd have like some like nice apartment, like a couple of villages over, just like put on a wig or something at the end of the day, and like just like be like, oh no, I'm not Mother Shipton. I'm just a lady with a very comfortable little house here. I don't live in a cave. Like I would totally pull that. And she's obviously not a stupid woman. Like she's like the stories about her, given the circumstances of her birth and where she ended up, she must be a fairly savvy woman. So it's the kind of thing you can imagine her being able to pull off. But yeah, it would not surprise me at all.
I mean, did you get paid to do all the prophecies?
Well, yeah, that's how she made her living. She worked as like it's quite weird. You see a lot of debates
Okay, so
on now.
where else is she gonna spend money?
Exactly. Like, what was she spending it on? Like, she collected all the herbs and stuff herself. She had no outgo. She didn't have kids. She did, this. She didn't have any outgoings. She had to buy food, and then like, them like, yeah, no, that got. She has to have had like a little place she was going back to, just like under the cover
I
of
mean,
night.
unless she had some like weird, like Russia stuff somewhere.
I reckon she had like a nice cozy little spot that she was going back to, like just incognito of a night time. I reckon that's what she was doing, definitely. But yeah, it's great. Like she's one of like the best known magical practitioners we have going back in English folk. And it's crazy as well because she was doing this through 15th, 16th, 17th century. This is the time when we had all of the witch trials in the UK. You had things like I've talked about on Tales from the Hedge in the old format. We had things like the Newcastle witch trials where we had like a dozen people being hung on the town moor for practicing witchcraft. And then we have like Ursula just sat there in a cave where she lived, having the kings chat about her, and people travel for hundreds of miles to come and buy her stuff. And it's like, hang on. But this was like a big double standard that you saw during that time period, because you would have witches and then you would have cunning people. And cunning people were seen as socially acceptable, and quite often you would have cunning people like making a living from ratting out witches almost, and it's like they're the same thing, it's just different. It's that meme, like, show me the difference between these two pictures. That it was that, and like they're the same picture. That was cunning people and witches. It's just one of them people seem to really like killing, and the other one that they didn't. So yes, she seems, like I say, she must have been a fairly clever woman to navigate that time period. So, hello, it's good to see you too. Yeah,
Unless they were
I'm
just
not.
scared about like
They might have been. You know what? That's not a bad shout. Like, they might have genuinely been scared of her, because if she's nailing all of these prophecies,
I'm
yeah,
terrified to hear about this. Like most of the
it,
prophecies did were like bad, and apparently she lives in a cave. Like I wouldn't want to mess with her.
you make a good point. You do raise a good point. They might have just genuinely been terrified of her. But yeah. So yeah, that is all we have for this episode. You know what? We've not done a bad time scale on this, Tiny. I was like, we'll put out like a half-hour podcast. It's been 45 minutes. That's a fairly respectable podcast. We don't know how often we're going to do these. I said at the beginning of the podcast, I've put this out there because these are the kind of things that I can put out at the moment. I'm still going through some health issues. I'm fine. But some days I'm not. So a lot of the bigger serious projects, like editing books and putting together content that involves a lot of putting together and editing, it's not going to happen for a little while, possibly February. But so we resurrected the podcast because I can do it with minimal research by just delving into the depths of my brain and pulling out the folklore stuff, and put it up live for you guys. So we are going to do these regularly, though. I don't know how often, probably once every couple of weeks. But for you guys watching on Twitch as well, we are going to start putting out regular streams. We may cheat a bit with Twitch because the software that we have means we can rerun shows. So we may either pre-record things, which we can do, or rerun them at some point, because because we can. Just because we can. So yes, thank you for being here and joining our stream. We'll probably be back in a couple of weeks. I don't know what topic we're going to do. If you subscribe to the Hedge Witchery Patreon, this will be available as an MP3 download within the next few days. If not, it will remain up in YouTube, and you will just have to suffer the advertising. Sorry. Yes. I won't let them put too many ads in it. I can send them off, but there might be a couple. Just watch them. It's nice. Support creators. Watch the ads. Unless you sign up to Patreon, then you can download it. It's awesome. Okay. On that note, I'm going to go. You can also, if you want, in the comments, suggest topics for us to look at. We cover everything history and folklore. So if you have a suggestion for something we could cover on a future show, we will very happily look at it. But anything else you want to add, Tiny, before we cut this off?
If people are going to comment stories, they should comment the messed up ones because they're the most interesting.
No, because then I have to research them. I'm pretty sure we're already on a watch list. I'm more than sure we're already on some kind of government watch list. Don't make me research them. They are fun though. Yeah, I agree. The crazy ones are hands down the good ones. Mother Shipton's about as wild as no, they're not. Like I made delve back. I wrote a series of articles a while ago about some of the other witchcraft trials. There's a particularly good one from Northumberland we might dive into at some point. But we'll see what we get in the comments. And yeah, we're going to try and do these at least every couple of weeks, even when I'm back doing other content more. So thank you for joining us. Like I say, the recording of this will be up on YouTube. I believe it's on. Where did we put this live? It's on my channel. It's on my standard channel, and it's also on the Hedge Witchery channel, which is quite new. But we're going to use some more of the. I know Tales from the Hedge has always been part of my main channel, but when we do more kind of crazy paranormal folklore content, we'll put some of it over there for those of you who follow me more for just hearing my lovely little voice and crafty tones. Yeah. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to say bye-bye now. Say bye-bye, Tiny.
Bye.
Bye.